I'm going to tell you a story about a major discovery in forest ecology. But we're going to use this to explore systems thinking and specifically consider the systems you're involved in your workplace. So let's go back to 1997. A young forestry major from the University of British Columbia named Suzanne Simard has a summer job to supervise tree planting in a patch of forest near her hometown in the interior of BC. She felt incredibly disheartened to see the young trees repeatedly dying and suspected it might have something to do with the soil, but she was a young woman in a male-dominated industry, and the theory at the time was that trees compete for light. The common practice was to replant trees in the same species in perfect rows to try and maximize growth. Suzanne knew that trees were not constantly battling each other for survival, but preferred to live in diverse communities. So she set out to prove her theory. She went back to get her PhD and designed what would be one of the most important discoveries in forest ecology to date. So here's what she did. She put giant pieces of cloth over fir trees to stop them from photosynthesizing, which means creating energy. Then she put radioactive isotopes into nearby birch and waited to see what happened. Within only a few hours, she could measure radioactive carbon isotopes inside the fir. The birch was sending energy to the fir tree. So foresters thought of birch trees as weeds and actively got rid of them. But in reality, these two species weren't competing. They were working together for each other's benefit. In the summer, birch leaves shade the fir, so it can't produce very much carbon energy. In the winter, the birch loses its leaves, but the fir is now able to photosynthesize because of its year-round needles. So this discovery of mutual relationship was groundbreaking enough. But what Suzanne figured out next is mind-blowing. Suzanne traced how the carbon was being exchanged and discovered a massive complex communication system of fungal threads in the soil. Yes, you're hearing me right. Fungal, as in mushrooms. These tasty little mushrooms on the forest floor are just the tip of the iceberg. They have thin roots that can stretch for up to 1 kilometer or more and can graft onto the roots of nearly all types of plants. These fungi are called mycorrhiza, and it turns out they act much like a fiber optic cable, carrying huge amounts of data in a variety of languages and to multiple plants in the forest. You can also think of them as blood vessels and trees as the lungs, or mycorrhiza have even been compared to neurons in our brain. So what does this discovery mean? Why is it so significant? Well, it shows that trees talk. In fact, they communicate in lively conversations. They live as a community and are social creatures. They share resources, but they also share memories. The older trees that Suzanne Simard called mother trees are the hubs of the underground network, and they help other trees learn how to fight off pests, among other adaptive behaviors. For example, if one tree senses a pine beetle burrowing in its bark, it will send out a warning signal to all the other trees in its network to increase their defenses. And then another older tree might send out signals to the younger trees to tell them how to do that. Another example includes how trees agree to grow less branches in certain areas so they can share light and essentially give each other elbow room. One last example is as simple as one tree finding a patch of excess light, but less access to water. So maybe you see a tree like this around you now. This tree will send its excess carbon to more shaded trees and then expect that when its soil dries out, it will get water in return. It isn't doing this just within the same species, nor within a few trees nearby. Trees can send signals up to a kilometer away. Tree culture is one where no tree hoards resources. They also ask for what they need when they need it and trust that their community will respond. It's in this study of forest ecology and the mycorrhiza network that we examine how the community in the forest functions. Then we'll explore the topics that you're here for today, like teamwork, communication, leadership, diversity, inclusion, mental health and wellness, and we'll compare those to the systems in nature. But first, I want to step back and give you a sense of the significance of Suzanne Simard's research and what it took to become so well published and accepted. When Suzanne completed her PhD, her thesis was published in Nature magazine, where they coined the term Wood Wide Web. It was 1997. But after that, not much happened. Her research was refuted by the mainstream forestry academics at the time. It took another 15 years for Suzanne's research to become widely accepted, and 20 for it to be understood outside of academic circles. In 2021, Suzanne published a memoir called Finding the Mother Tree. It was quickly a New York Times bestseller and picked up by Amy Adams' production company and will be made into a movie soon. Last year, nearly every major media outlet wrote about her book, with articles in the New York Times, the Washington Post, etc. And she was featured in several really successful documentaries. She continued to make waves when she was quoted on Ted Lasso. For those of you who aren't big fans yet, it's an Emmy Award-winning show about coaching a soccer team and de facto leadership handbook for many, essentially. Suzanne's also spoken at the TED Conference, with her talk receiving 6 million views to date. But what I love about Suzanne's work is her advocacy for science communication. This is a movement to make science more accessible. And to me, her writing is more like poetry. So here's a quote from the jacket of her book. Forests are social cooperative creatures, connected through underground networks by which we communicate their vitality and vulnerabilities, with communal lives not that different from our own. And here's another quote from inside her book. The trees soon revealed startling secrets. I discovered that they are in a web of interdependence linked by a system of underground channels, where they perceive and connect and relate with an ancient intricacy and wisdom that can no longer be denied. In this search for the truth, the trees have shown me their perceptiveness and responsiveness, connections and conversations.